the Limbwalkers podcast. Now here's your host, Will Glaros.
Hey everybody, welcome into the Limbwalkers podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the I guess it's a photo behind us. It is, if one never ventures out on the limb, one will never taste the fruit. And there's a picture of a very handsome gray-haired man standing on a limb away from the trunk of the tree, and it looks like he could fall any minute. And it looks kind of dangerous. If you had your 9-year-old grandson standing on that, you would say, "Get off of there," or "Get back by the trunk of the tree." But that's not what this is about. You got to take some risk in life. We got to look back and listen to others and their experiences. And one of those that I advocate for you to listen to is Will Glaros. Welcome in, Will.
Morning, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, this has been a crazy week. After my 1,000-mile drive with my son, I kind of suffered through a little bit with the cold I caught from it and everything, but kept on doing what I got to do.
What is it you got to do?
I got to help people realize they can get more out of life than they ever thought they could. And that sometimes it is just luck and fate that happens.
More out of life than you ever thought you could or deserved.
Deserved, correct.
Right? I want to go off with that one, but I know you got a specific topic today. What do you want to talk about today?
I want to talk about, actually, as I mentioned, the word fate. And sometimes how, even though you properly prepare, and sometimes you lose and sometimes you win, sometimes fate enters the picture and produces maybe something you want or something you don't want. But fate has a place that goes far beyond anything we work to or try to do purposefully. So
I know you like this topic and you want to hit it, and it's kind of a sad topic sometimes because, but the Edmund Fitzgerald, we all know the song, we all have sung along, and how sad it is, but it affects you in a certain way. Talk about it.
It does. Actually, it was kind of an act of faith that occurred. My wife and I had decided I'd never been to the island our family was from in Greece, the island of Icaria, which is supposedly the place where Icarus plummeted to his death. And I decided in 2014 we should go back. So my sister and I and our spouses went to the island for a week. And it was glorious. I mean, you're seeing where your grandparents grew up. You're eating their food. It's known as one of the, I can't remember the name for it, but where people on an average live to be 100 years old because of the way they eat and drink and exercise. And after a week of this, we went to a little outdoor cafe our last night, and we ran into the guy that was the overseer for the house we were staying in. And he was sitting there with another gentleman, and he invited us over to join them. So we did. And the conversation got to the fact that the man that was with the homesteader, he had been a Greek ship captain at one point, and then came to the United States and worked in the Great Lakes, captaining the ore boats that go up to Superior, Wisconsin and back. And in the discussion, I couldn't help myself. I'm always inquiring. I said to him, "Does anybody really know what happened to the Edmund Fitzgerald ship?" And you could see his entire countenance change. His eyes lowered. He just looked down and took a deep breath. And then all of a sudden he came back and he said, "I'm sorry for my reaction, but the Edmund Fitzgerald, I don't know that anybody will ever know what happened to it, but I know what it did to me." He said, "I had a young man who sailed with me on the ship that I was captaining at the time. And he was really a good employee, and I wanted to get him advancement, but he didn't have the proper training. So to get him the proper training that he needed, I had to recommend him to be transferred to another ship. And I suggested that he go to my friend, Captain McSorley, I think it was, the captain of the Edmund Fitzgerald, for that training. And he thanked me and then went off to join that ship. And then on that fateful day in November the 11th, I believe it was, that ship went down. And he said, I have been living with the guilt of that young man ever since that time. And so 2014, 1970, whatever it was, 77. Well, this was the 50th year, so 75. And so I went home and I started reading about the Edmund Fitzgerald a little more intensely, and then let it drop. Didn't think about it again until about 4 years later. We were in Wilmington, Ohio, where my wife graduated from high school, and for some reason being there reminded me about this young man, Paul Michael Ripa, the boy that he had sent to the Edmund Fitzgerald. And I thought, I've got to do more to find out about that again. So I reinvigorated my viewing about Ripa and Captain Markakis and the Edmund Fitzgerald. And I found the sisters of the kid who had died. And I actually had phone discussions with them many times. And Captain Markakis' guilt really bothered me. So I asked them if they would be willing, because they held no ill feeling toward anybody. I asked the sisters if they would be willing to talk with him. And they were. And we were able to schedule a time when the two sisters and Captain Markakis spent half an hour to 45 minutes on the phone talking about Paul, the son, or their brother, and about the accident and about how much he had faith to send Paul along because he was so good, which gave them a sense of satisfaction. And it gave him a sense of satisfaction that he felt he had been basically forgiven by the sisters. And it was just incredible to be part of that type of fate taking place. That I was on an island at a time when the captain was there, back at the school where my wife went to school, to remind me of it, and then to bring everybody together to get satisfaction for everyone over something so tragic. Fate has a way of playing a place in your life, and it happens.
Let's go back a little bit. We have Adriana. Do you even know what the Edmund Fitzgerald was? Okay, you see, we got to go back a little bit for some of our younger listeners. The Edmund Fitzgerald, is that a picture of it?
That's it. It was the longest boat sailing in the Great Lakes.
I was going to say, look at how that's the Edmund Fitzgerald. If you're watching it on YouTube, and you can go to WJOB 1230 and just click on Limbwalkers, and you'll be able to see it. It is a long iron ore boat.
726 feet.
726 feet long. What do you know of what happened to it?
The only thing I know is remembering on that date, hearing the reports, the break-ins of the news saying that there was a ore boat on the Lake Superior that couldn't be contacted, and then later to hear that what they think happened, based on the way it's sitting on the bottom at about 530 feet depth, that it had just snapped in half from the load weight and the wave. They were in 20-foot waves that day when that happened. Or that night.
That was November 10th of 1975.
Yeah.
So we're looking at a picture on it, on the video portion of what we're doing. And if I remember, it wasn't too far from shore, right?
No, it was not.
Yeah, but it basically just snapped completely in half, probably full of iron ore, and then probably just went straight to the bottom.
Yeah, they've basically found nothing. I mean, they have now with subs and things going down to examine it, But the family actually wants them to leave it where it is, kind of as a memorial to the people, the families of the people. In fact, just this week, I tried to reach them, and the last day I haven't been able to re-engage with them, with it being the 50th year, and I'll keep trying. But there was just, speaking with Captain Markakis, he has since passed away, by the way, in 2022 he passed. And it was interesting how I found him, because when we met him in Greece, he said he was from Boca Raton, Florida, which is where a lot of my family lives, in that area. And so I called one of my members, or one of my family members. I said, "Do you know this Captain Markakis?" "Oh, yeah, we do." And then we worked a way to get his phone number so that I could engage in trying to connect Captain Markakis and the two sisters. But it was all based on the common denominator of the Edmund Fitzgerald, and which has been made famous by Gordon Lightfoot with that song. And always you hear it a lot this time of year because of the event occurring this time of year.
So let's relate that to fate. If you guys listen to this podcast, and I would suggest that you do, especially if you're looking for just some wisdom from a region guy on how he's lived his life and what you could take out of that. We have not in any of these episodes talk about the role of fate. You more often talk about the role of choice and the decisions that you make, and right, that there are effects from the decisions that you make, but we haven't talked about this. So what lesson do you take out of meeting Markakis, coming back, contacting the sisters of the young sailor, and then bringing them together and having them have a discussion and maybe get some closure on a couple of issues? Why do you bring this up?
I bring it up because, to me, we can plan and do as much as we can to get the most out of our life that we can. But there are, and I don't mean to sound weird about this, there are just things that we don't control and we have no idea that are happening around us, away from us, that are linked to enter our destiny in some way. I mean, the fact that we had been to that place, that little cafe, almost every night we had gone there. We never saw the guy that took the caretaker of the house we were staying in. We never had seen Captain Markakis. And also, our last night, boom, there they are together, and this dialogue starts. The fate of that happening started the ball rolling towards getting an introduction with the sisters and the captain, finding out more about the brother, finding more about them. They ran a little store in Ashtabula, Ohio called Three Sisters, and Three Sisters, they basically sell stuff, but they do it all for charity and then give the money to charities. But it enabled me to really have a real life experience of having something come out of nowhere that I was part of and was able to help maneuver into an event occurring that satisfied two lives, basically all the lives of the Paul Ripa's family and Captain Markakis, and gives satisfaction that both, but I had no idea that meeting would lead to something that fateful for those people involved.
So you had to go into that meeting, or going around in your life. I mean, what can you offer to people as kind of advice, like these fate moments in your life are going to happen? Do you advocate that people maintain an openness to moments of fate?
Absolutely.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, I'm going to read something that I had sent to you. Fate can come at any time in any fashion. That is why you never quit, because the future and the past can surprise you.
the future and the past. Why would the past surprise you?
Well, the past surprised me because the Edmund Fitzgerald, which I just listened to, Gordon Lightfoot, or I heard on the news, or it was a news story, is a past event that occurred to impact my life and the lives of a number of other people. The thing that it tells me is, the simple lesson is never quit, never stop trying, because you don't know when fate has something in surprise for you that has something to do with something you may have done years ago to help somebody, to bail somebody out, or somebody learned something from you that enabled them to come through and be victorious.
This is where there is a bit of a disconnect, okay? In that I know that you have a life philosophy, and it has, quite frankly, done me a lot of good, because I tell you, I'm a slacker, all right? And you don't like that, but that's just how it is, man. And one of the things that...
Well, let me slack like you, baby.
I mean,
that's your new.
I went to let me slack like you. I like that. We're going to use that for something. But, I chose a college where I could be a slacker, and, I'm a Grateful Dead person.
Okay, there's fate. You go to college, you go to play, baseball or whatever it was, and you're walking through the gym when you run into the boxing guy, which changed your life.
It did.
So, fate.
That was a fate moment. There's
all kinds of them in your life. You got to look back and think about.
But one of the things that I like to do mentally to basically is almost diametrically opposed to what you're saying is, you're like, never stop trying, keep trying. I kind of like to look at it like, you know what, I'm trying too hard. I just want to sit back and just let the world come to me for a little while. And to me, that's how I can find some of the creative moments and solutions. That's how I'm open to a conversation that, that's really good. Maybe I'll follow that conversation and we'll get, something positive into it. But it only comes because I've stopped trying. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not pushing it right now. I'm just going to take what comes. So it's the opposite of what you're saying.
Not really. I mean, that's your way of dealing with life, but it still doesn't mean there's something happening out there fatefully that is going to impact you to put you on the right track from that position of, okay, I'm just sitting here. Some other unknown event occurred over here, and now all of a sudden you meet somebody that gets you fired up again.
So, all right, I understand it. I mean, I kind of get a little bit of like never. I guess what I would interpret that is most like, always be open for events you can't control coming into your life, and hopefully giving you some, making it more interesting in some way.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's flip this whole discussion. There are moments of fate, of tragedy,
yes,
of horror that can be just imprinted upon you in a moment. Could be stuff that maybe someone was sick for a long time and they finally died. You kind of knew it was coming.
Yeah.
But then there are moments of fate that will change your life forever that are just awful. What do you say about those moments of fate?
I think those happen. And it's just, that is when a lot of the stuff that I have learned through my career and over the years that we talk about here every week, that's when to soften those times or to get through them, because sometimes you can't soften them. That's when you use those tools that you've learned along the way. Tomorrow's another day. Statements that, I've got all kinds of quotes. That book of quotes that I gave you, I mean, to me, I try to read from that every day to remind myself that nobody has left this world for the hereafter or whatever you believe. No one has left it that hasn't been through some sort of trial and tribulation. Everybody faces them. everybody gets through them in some way, or they don't get through them and they ruin the rest of their life. But to me, it's those things that I've studied over those years and I've learned from others and I try to pass on to others. Those are the tools that you have available to you to deal with those tragedies. Fate is not always on the positive side. Sometimes, I could drive out here and turn on to Indianapolis Boulevard and be hit by a truck. Then everybody around me has to deal with that fateful event that occurred out of nowhere. And it's horrible. But hopefully you've developed enough tools and techniques and learned enough to gradually get through tragedy, or to grasp and hold on with dear life to the potential success you could have from this fateful meeting between you and the person you've been looking for that can take you to new heights.
Wow. I think that would be, is there anything else you want to add on that? We're talking about a moment where you're in Icaria and you run into Captain Marthakis, and Captain Marthakis is pushed a young sailor to go on the Edmund Fitzgerald, which snapped in half in Lake Superior and went straight to the bottom, and everybody was killed.
Yep.
And they still don't know what happened, but they're pretty sure that it snapped in half, right?
Yep. By the way, here's a picture of Captain Marthakis.
Marthakis. All right. Not Marthakis. Marthakis. Okay.
And then on the back of this one, no, I don't know that I've got the picture. I had a picture on one of these of Paul.
Wow, these ore boats, man. Have you ever seen one in person?
I did. Actually, my next door neighbor when I grew up, Harold Skelly, was a chief engineer at Inland. And his daughter, who is still a good friend of Marcia's and mine, Sherry, she invited us to they are allowed to bring family members on the ore boat to take a cruise up to Superior or back. So they invited us to go, and something happened where Marcia and I couldn't go, and we really regretted it because they said it was like living like a king. The food was outstanding. On those trips, you'd be on the deck sunbathing, and no pool or anything unless you want to jump in the lake. But they were marvelous, and still are marvelous ships of the sea. And we've been up fishing in Montana or in Canada, and gone through those areas and seen those massive boats up there. They're immense.
I went to Duluth, Minnesota a couple of times, and I don't really like the touristy tours I'm not going to take a bus around Chicago or going to another city. They have you can get on and off the bus. In Boston they had a big on and off the bus thing, and no, but I took my wife's like, hey man, let's take the boat tour in Duluth, Minnesota. And we went up and we would go by these grain haulers and by these ore boats, and you just they're like cities floating around, man. They're like football fields long, several football fields long, and then they're so high, even when the little boat you're in looking up, you really can't see what's on deck unless you're far away. With the immensity of them, just to think about this thing being 726 feet long and snapping in half. It's just awful.
It really is. I'm amazed by those boats. In fact, many times when I speak to kids groups, I have video that I'll use, and it typically is a discussion about challenges and difficulty. And I always use boats out in the North Sea maneuvering their way through these 40 and 50-foot waves, making it to their destination or out to the oil rigs out there or whatever, and show the kids, in fact, I'm trying to think what the statement was. If the sailors of old, I don't want to blow it, but if they understood what was out ahead of them, they never would have gotten on the boat to get there. So sometimes you're just faced with tragedy or faced with tough times, and you got to live through it. You realize you can, and that's life,
He's Will Glaros. This is the Limbwalkers podcast. Please like it on Apple, Spotify, wherever. You'll get notified when we get a new one. You can also like the entire WJOB podcast network. Adriana Alvarez is producing this, and we'll cut this up and put it up onto Apple, Spotify, that kind of stuff. So honor her work, honor Will Glaros. He shares all of his experiences with us weekly on this. Once again, thanks a lot, Will.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it, the opportunity to share the story of fate.
Till next time, see you later.
This has been Limbwalkers Podcast. Thank you for listening.